Good morning, everybody. You know, Peter, Zoom is making me better at reading lips.
I realized I was on mute after I said good morning, George. I could have just been mumbling to myself, so.
You could have been. It's making me think I'm better at reading lips.
So I forgot what this meeting is about today. Was it important? Only kidding, folks.
We're both 2 minutes early. It must be important.
So
Well, I can say if anybody's listening and having suspense, we're here to have a budget presentation.
Right. Sole purpose today. And I'm glad to get here. I started Zoom originally with only myself in a separate meeting to change my profile picture, which I'm about to do, and I'll show you why. I was kidding around in another meeting last night, and I thought you'd appreciate that. But I didn't want to do anything as undignified as to come into this meeting with that picture. So I'm going to fix that now.
Hello.
Hi, Julie.
Sorry, testing the microphone.
So it appears we're waiting on Brian and Patsy and Sean still, I guess.
Brian and Patsy are on their way. Hold on just a second. Okay, yeah, they're coming. He's just getting everything together. I'm still crossing people over. Bear with me. What's that fish? Oh my gosh.
Matt, your fish looks radioactive. I'm not sure you should eat that sort of thing.
No, I did not eat it. I put it back so that it could be caught probably again.
Well, you might as well tell us more about your fish, Matt.
Oh, well, that's a golden trout. Yeah. I had not caught one before, and so I was pretty excited when I got that guy in. Yeah.
Where'd you find it?
That's up near Deckers. It was a private fishing club that I got an invite to kind of last minute. And
Cool.
so, yeah, it was a great day.
Morning, Sean.
Hey.
Okay, looks like the team's all here.
So
So,
could I, just real quick, I have a hard stop at 12, and if we have to go beyond that, I'm willing to do that. I'll just need to let them know I'll be absent from that other meeting. It's a pretty important one, but this is more important. Do we have any indication of, and I just want to let them know as soon as possible.
I don't anticipate this taking more than 2 hours, Brian.
That's gonna be up to you guys. It's up to you and your level of detailed questioning you're gonna have for us, which I fully expect to be coming shortly.
Or I guess that would be 3 hours. Yeah,
But
I looked at the presentation and I think it's more like a 1 hour meeting, but I guess we'll see.
I came with a list of
Okay.
observations and questions that's probably shorter than it feels.
Yeah, let's go. We'll see how it goes, but I'll presume I can get there, and if not, I'll bail and stay here anyway. So,
Okay, sounds good. So it is October 12th. This is a special meeting for us to receive the budget presentation. And so, Brian, actually, I apologize. I got to do public comment really fast here.
oh,
First thing on the agenda is public comment. If you're here for public comment, please click raise hand. Seeing no attendees that are not staff and no raised hands, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. And the next and only other thing on the agenda is for this budget presentation. Brian, the floor is yours.
thank you. There we go. Phone off. You don't hear my lightning part. My favorite day of the year, budget day. So welcome, special meeting to talk budget. I guess I would submit to you, this is probably one of the most important decisions that we bring as staff that we bring to you every year. We are setting forth, sorry about that. We are setting forth, our course of doing business here in the county. Okay. Again, probably one of the most important decisions that we bring to you. It sets the course of the year. It's our proposal, our recommendations for how we believe that we can meet your strategic objectives, your priorities that you set out for the organization. So this is an important decision, and it's one that we recognize, and it's one that we don't take lightly. The process of budgeting is an important one, and rather than sitting in an office with finance staff and building spreadsheets and ultimately building budgets, I'd much prefer to be facilitating a collaborative approach to how we prioritize across the entire organization. But this really wasn't a normal year for us, I think, with respect to budgeting and finance. As you know, we had some significant turnover on our finance staff, both before I got here and some after. And quite frankly, it made this year a little bit more of a challenge when it comes to budgeting, but we're here. We're definitely here. And first and foremost, I want to offer a public thank you to Patsy Hernandez, who came back, former finance director of ours, who came back and to help us put this document together. I don't think we'd be here without her. Now, let me just say this: there's a tremendous amount of work that happens at the department level, department and division level, for sure. Lots of work happens at that level, but at some point it gets forwarded to us in the county manager's office and to the finance team. And it's at that point where we're trying to bring all these various budgets under one house, right? And that's the work of finance. And I'm not so sure that would have happened without Patsy's assistance. So thank you very much, Patsy, who's on this call this morning. Thank you to all the departments who participated in building this budget as well. And one more thank you to Beth Luther, who was also majorly involved in putting the final parts of this book together. So lots of work by lots of folks that go into building a proposed budget for you. But again, this process is an important one, and I want to spend just a minute talking about the process, talking about this process of policy, and that it begins with the three of you. You're the leadership of this organization, of the county. You set our direction. You set the vision for us, the course, the path that you want us to head down. And so it starts there. Budgeting starts there. It probably starts even before that with respect to the citizen perspective. And that's all the work that the three of you do in the community. It's all the teams and groups that you participate on. It's your individual conversations with residents, with business owners, et cetera. You know, that perspective of our residents, that perspective of our citizens informs your policy direction, right? And you ultimately give that direction to us, and then we interpret that direction. And I think it's one of the many roles of county managers to help interpret that direction for staff. And then we go to work as staff and we develop budgets. And that takes some time. We put those budgets together, then we ultimately come to you and bring forward a proposed budget to you. And that's what we're doing here for the first time for the 2022 budget. And this is not our first meeting, obviously, to talk about budget. But once we get to a point where you're comfortable with where that budget is at, it gets adopted. Staff goes back to work, right? We should be developing action plans for all the various projects that are in this proposed book. This, again, how we're going to meet your objectives, your priorities. Through that work, through those projects, hopefully results are produced. Hopefully those results are positive, but we should know, because we should be measuring how well we're doing. As your relatively new county manager now, I can't say for sure I know exactly how we're measuring right now. But if we want to be a high-performing local government, how do we know we are? And the only way to know that is to measure our success, right? So how well are we doing at accomplishing the budget that you ultimately adopt? How are we measuring our success? And I don't have the answer to that yet myself, but then again, it's not a conversation we've had time to have. But I place it here because it's an important part of the policy cycle, right? You set the direction, you adopt it. We bring a budget to you, you adopt it. But how well are we doing at performing with respect to what we're saying is inside the budget, right? And that's the role of staff is to perform, right? And then we measure. How well we do informs the citizen perspective, and then the cycle just continues. And it's a continuous cycle. And we're at some point in that cycle at any moment in any given fiscal year for us with respect to how we work in county government. So quick thoughts on the policy cycle. Any questions before I keep going? We did use a set of assumptions. I will say that this has been a work in progress, partly because of what I just shared, all the change that we've gone through. So there are no substantive changes to this presentation from what you've already seen. I did add some title slides, et cetera, but no substantive changes. But we did use some assumptions as we build this budget, right? It's your objectives. I'm looking on the wall right now at a list of 2021 strategic objectives that you've adopted as the board. Those are your priorities. Those are your objectives. That's where you're saying you want to see the county spending its resources, its time, its money, it's the focus of its people. So our budget has to be developed around your strategic objectives. If what we're working on isn't found on your strategic objectives, we got to ask ourselves, how does it fit, right? Why are we doing this component of our work? So your objectives have got to inform the budget that we bring. We want to fund existing levels of service when at all possible. And we got to do that within the confines of the resources that we have, right? But as we look to build budgets, it's about funding at least at the existing level of service. And then finally, employee retention and recruitment. And I'm going to speak more to this later, but one of the things I was struck by as the new county manager, I went around big meet and greets with most, if not all, the departments. And one of the key themes that came through that I was surprised about, and I guess now I shouldn't have been, but it wasn't that, well, yes, there were some questions about we need more staff, but what I was surprised about was the board has already approved the staff, but I can't hire caseworkers for my human services team. I can't hire equipment operators for road and bridge. So those are positions that you've already approved, you've approved a budget for, yet those departments are unable to fill those existing positions. And so that's a problem for us as a local government, right? That's about retention and recruitment. How do we get the work of the county done? How do we get your priorities done if we can't fill some of those key spots? And so that's That's got to be part of our assumptions as we build a budget and move forward. So how do we stand as we enter into a new fiscal year? And as I said, things are ebbing and flowing and changing. There is one error on this sheet right now. I gotta come clean on and share with you on. The general fund numbers are transposed. So we're eating $1.2 million into the general fund, into the fund balance reserves overall. And we can talk more about that as we move through. But this is I guess a snapshot of how we're doing financially across all of our funds. So if you look at, road and bridge, almost $600,000 we're eating into fund balance, but that shouldn't be surprising given the election that's occurring in a couple of weeks, right? That's the reason we forwarded that ballot measure. So we obviously can't count on that money, and so that's not built into the budget right now. So you're seeing us eating into fund balance there. Capital projects fund related to the clinic, not surprising. Public health, we're going to have some questions and some things we're going to discuss moving forward about the public health fund. As you can see, we've eaten up the reserves in that fund. Not so sure that's surprising given how we've ramped up with respect to our expenses, staffing, et cetera, associated with our response to the pandemic. But certainly from a budgeting perspective, something we're going to have to look at as we move forward. So that's a snapshot of fund balance. And here's our property tax. And unfortunately, I got to point out one small error here as well. That property tax number for 2022 was $1 million higher than it should be. Just didn't get that number changed in an existing table. So but it changed the percentage to 1.14. So property taxes remain flat, 1% down. And that's due in part to the mine leveling off its productions, heading towards a closure at some point, at some date into the future. But that's the reality of where we stand with respect to property taxes. On a positive note, sales taxes are trending in the right direction. We're projecting a 2% increase over our 2021 estimate for our sales tax collections. I wish I could make that 2% higher. I really do. I recommend that 2% was higher. And we spent quite a bit of time in a conference room staring at the screen discussing whether we could stomach recommending that number be higher. The last thing we want to do is recommend that number be higher, budget to that number, and then not hit that mark, right? And that's the fear. Part of it's the conservative nature of budgeting of a county manager, I guess, but that's certainly not a number you want to target and not hit, right? Now, it should be noted also that historically, the county has budgeted all of its sales tax while in the general fund specific to capital projects. So all of our uncommitted right now, the uncommitted sales tax that's not going to the ambulance fund, we've historically budgeted that in general fund and funded all of our capital with that. That's just a fact. It's not a comment either way, but it does mean we're not using sales tax to fund other things, such as employee compensation, for instance. Might there be a year where we do less capital projects and potentially do something with respect to with employee compensation? So I just point that out that historically that's where the county has budgeted its sales tax, all in its capital projects area. Now that's important too, right? The projects are extremely important. Don't get me wrong there. I'm not suggesting that they're not. It's just a decision that the county has made over the years. All right, now we're getting into more of the specifics of the budget itself. Any thoughts or questions before I keep going? So this is a breakdown specifically of our property tax and how we distribute total collections. So the general fund receives 78.3% of our overall property tax collection. You know this already. That's for the general fund. That's an over reliance on one tax, right, to fund our general fund, which is where the majority of our operations lie, the majority of our people, the majority of our projects, etc. But that's a reality of the resources that we have, right? So 78% going straight into the general fund, again, where the majority of our expenses are. another 16% in road and bridge, and then small amount distributed between open space and social services. So that is how we distribute our property tax. So this is total revenue by fund. So we're bringing in 39.2, maybe it's closer to 3 million to 39.3 in total revenues. Not surprisingly, 22.5 of those going directly into the general fund in order to fund the majority of our operations, where the majority of our people are, projects are, et cetera, road and bridge, capital projects following that up. The 1.2 million you see there in ambulance sales tax, that gets ultimately transferred into the general fund to fund EMS. So we budget that in a specific revenue fund, and then that gets transferred to the general fund to cover the expenses of EMS itself. So that's a breakdown of how revenue is distributed by fund, and something has happened to this slide in the last 5 minutes. This was a breakdown of expenditures by fund. It's going to look very similar to this one, in that expenditures are tracking revenues. I think the general fund, well, you can see the general fund numbers, don't I? Now they're all set back. We're having a PowerPoint issue, I guess. So again, not surprisingly, the majority of expenditures falling into the general fund. There's something going on with maybe the sharing of the screen. It's losing the, I don't know what's going on here. But again, not surprisingly, general fund being the highest, capital projects, etc. Expenditures by fund, that big thing right here that's missing its label is road and bridge. So this shows you operating expenditures by division. So that's all the divisions in the county. So you're looking at the proposed budget on the far left, what we're estimating in 2021, and what the actual approved budget looked like in 20. So that's across all of our various divisions. Sheriff has the most staff, so you're seeing a larger budget there. A lot of infrastructure related to sheriff, but then again, there's a lot of staff in the county administrator's office as well, with county manager's office with respect to transit, emergency medical facilities, etc. So county manager's office is another part of the large slice of the pie, and then obviously public works where road and bridge falls. So. Looking to see if I'm missing anything from my notes. All right, now getting into the specifics of the general fund itself. The sharing of the screen is doing something to my presentation. I can see it on one screen and not on the other, so I don't know what's going on here. But what you're seeing here is revenue by general, just at the general fund revenue. So the black box that is not showing up, I'm not so sure why that is. These are GFOA functional areas. Actually, I take that back. We're looking at revenue, so it's not even showing up on mine. Oh, it's economic development. It's not. I apologize. There's something going on with the sharing of the screen, and I can't. It's not working.
Ryan, it might help to unshare and then reshare.
The presentation doesn't look that way. Maybe it's presentation mode. It's back. I'll keep her out of presentation mode. Is this large enough to see on your screen? Not really.
Ryan, in the bottom right corner of your screen where it says, I think 11%, you can increase that size there and it'll, there you go.
Yeah, it's still doing something weird. There's something going on. I don't know. It's the version into to Zoom. But again, this is, you're looking specifically at general fund net revenues, 43% of the general fund funded by property tax. Another 10% is sales tax, that is your EMS fund. Intergovernmental, lots of state grants in there. Transfers from other funds. I don't know if I can tell that. Let's see it. I apologize. I'm not so sure what. But again, as you can see, 42% of our general fund is funded by property tax. You know, there are 19 by state grants, etc. In terms of expenses, this is a breakdown by the functional categories. You know, public safety, 52% of the general fund is public safety, so that's the sheriff's office and EMS. Economic development, so that is everything we do with the EDC, in addition to what Lisa's doing with our leasing of water rights. And then that large blue chunk that does not have a label is general government. So that's, you know, county manager, county attorney, it's all the general aspects of government, strategic and community planning, etc. So general government being the second largest piece of that. That's a little under 40% with respect to how we spend money in the general fund. Now take a question. All right, now taking a look at some of our other funds here. So this is road and bridge revenues, 4.2 million total. A little over 2.8 in that is in taxes. That's both sales tax and property tax. State grants, HUTF, and intergovernmental there, etc. So breakdown of the revenues in our road and bridge fund. Corresponding expenses in road and bridge, largest being salaries and capital first, and then salaries and wages, not surprising. Need the people to do all the work involved in that capital slice. Equipment and other aspects, repair, maintenance. So how we expend expenses related to the road and bridge fund. I don't know what this is doing to me here. Presentation I've worked on all week did not look like this in a non-Zoom world, but this is a major operational expenditures by major funds. So this is so social services. You'll see here public health, emergency services district, in addition to road and bridge and general fund that you've already seen. So what we estimated in 21, and then the proposed budget in 22. All right, before we get into some of these unfunded, I wanted to make one comment about the district attorney's budget. I don't know if you noticed in there or not. But we are not recommending budgeting the full amount that the district attorney had requested from us. She has concerns related to recently passed state legislation around, I think it's 48-hour bonding. It's around the use of the body-worn cameras and the fact that her staff is going to be responsible for watching all of that footage. But at the same time, having no real understanding of truly how it's going to impact, just being concerned about it, which is understood. So she asked for 6 new FTE. She asked for, I believe, a 6% raise for her staff. And so it increased our allocation substantially over the existing year. I met with the 3 other county managers, my counterparts. We had a conversation about our own budget situations. Those 3 counties are providing compensation increases. We are not. Kind of hard for me to fund the DA's offices 6 new FTEs and a 6% raise when we're struggling trying to do the same thing for our own team. We made a decision as the 4 county managers to offer her 10% above the 2020 allocation. they reduced our cost in 21 due to the pandemic. So 20 was a better understanding of our costs associated with the work going on in the DA's office. We sent them a letter offering 10% above each of the 4 communities' cost in, I was using allocation earlier, cost in 2020. She accepted that, was fine with that. So that's why you see a decrease in what she requested and what we're proposing in the budget. We did tell her in the letter that, come back and talk to us if you are realizing a very great constraint or concerns, overtime, et cetera, related to the new legislation, then come back and have a conversation with us. Go out and have an understanding of how all your counterparts are doing this in some of the other districts. How are they responding to this? It is new legislation, but no one's responded to it yet. So before we increase budgets, let's have an understanding of the impact and then have a conversation later. She was fine with that. So she accepted that. So I just wanted to make a comment about where we're at with the DA's office. And then to end here, I wanted to share some of the things that's not in the proposed budget that were requested by our departments and divisions. So this shows you some positions that are out there that departments believe are in need. In addition to the bottom 2, the second from the bottom, it says 1% increase to county's retirement contribution. So I know Kate and the HR team had presented to you what it would take to increase the county's contribution to our to retirement of individual employees' retirements, wanting to ramp that up by 1% over the next following years, to ramp it up from 4 to 8. That first increase is $250,000. So that's just going to compound itself over time, right? And so we wanted you to know that we did the analysis at your request, but we at this point can't see how we can shoehorn that into the budget without removing some other things. So that's on the unfunded list. A 1% increase in compensation countywide is $129,000, $130,000. I'm showing you the 1%. I think we have a group of employees that would probably welcome the 1% raise, and I think we have a group of employees that would be probably maybe offended by 1% raise. Employees haven't had a raise since January of 2020. We did do a compensation study last year. It did move some of the ranges that had fallen below market. So anyone who fell below that range got a bump up to the bottom of the range. Those were the only folks last year that got any additional compensation. So, but again, just not something that I could see fitting into a balanced budget. I would have loved to, times that number by 3 and given that 3% across the board. But again, it's just so hard to try and fit that into a balanced budget. And then finally, there's a list of unfunded capital requests as well. These are all requests that came from departments, divisions, that we did not include in the proposed budget. Just didn't see a way to add them. In addition to the fact that you see a lot of IT stuff on here, and we've got a lot of aging IT infrastructure, which is part of the reason why if you've noticed the increase in the IT budget. One of the things I did increase was IT, viewing this as these are the tools that employees need to get their jobs done, right? So, which is why I chose to at least include a portion of some of the increase for some of the infrastructure in IT. But again, this is a list of outstanding capital that were requested by departments that we just didn't see a way to fit into a balanced proposed budget. Some upcoming dates for you, public hearing, 2 public hearings on the 16th, 1 and 6 p.m. Is that correct, Beth? Excellent. According to Diane, you should be getting your final. We were getting the final assessed values by December 1st. We are targeting bringing to you the adoption of the county budget on the 7th of December. And then potentially certification of mill levies on the 21st. That's a week of Christmas, so whether or not we want to meet that week, that could be up for discussion at a later date. But these are at least some of the key action items of the board coming up with respect to the budget itself. Whether or not we stick to these dates or not, there's some of the key actions the board will be taking over the next several months. And then finally, I just wanted to end on a few key takeaways. You know, you can learn a great deal about an organization by building its budget. It's been a challenge this year, but I must say I had a lot of fun at doing it. I've learned a tremendous amount about this organization, and it was fun despite the challenges that we face. And I shared with you one of the challenges at the start, but the other is the financial situation that we find ourselves in as a county. Our expenditures are outpacing our revenues. I mean, that's the bottom line. And I don't, as I review the budget, I don't necessarily think that's because we're trying to live outside of our means as much as this is a cost of the existing service that we provide. And I don't see the fact that we're providing too much or excess or gold-plated services in any environments. But unless one works in a community or lives in a community that has some kind of a sacred revenue source that they're bringing in, most of us are living and dealing with finite resources, right? They're finite resources, and we have more needs than we do the funds to support those needs. And I think that's a conversation we're going to have in the end as an organization. We got a revenue problem. There are not a lot of large buckets of dollars in our budget to just go and slash. And I'm not recommending that we do that anyway, but those buckets don't even exist. So we've got some sort of a revenue problem. What steps can we take as an organization? How can we work in partnership with you on that issue of increasing our revenue collections in this country? Not sure what that looks like yet. But I think together we need to chart some kind of a path to really look at the long-term financial sustainability of our county operations, because that's my job as county manager. I think that's our job in partnership and working with you with respect to being proper public servants of the taxpayer dollar, right? And how we're properly and effectively using those funds that we're being entrusted with by the community itself. So I think I will stop there and take any questions, thoughts you have. We've got the entire leadership team on the line here, ready to take some of those tough questions that I can't answer. So I think I'll stop there.
Just kind of two general questions, but first, thank you for all the hard work that obviously went into that. Appreciate kind of the clarity of the presentation. My first question, I'll just ask both of them, then you can address them however you want. I haven't heard the words priority-based budgeting, and that's probably okay. I know we've kind of we've talked about it. We've taken grant money. We've spent a bunch of effort trying to figure that out. And I don't know that we've ever gotten it to the point where it's informed our decisions. So maybe you have some idea whether we want to just drop that and pretend like we never started it, or whether we're going to use it as a tool. But I kind of think we should head in one of those two directions. And then the other one, I guess I would love to see some alternatives to just deciding we're not going to help out our staff with it when it comes to inflation and the cost of living increases, which I think we're all aware of recently, and also the increasing difficulty with attracting and retaining good staff. So I'd love to see a set of trade-offs that we could potentially evaluate to say, hey, we could maybe even shut down this part of our county government, and that would allow us to do a much better job than the other 90% or something like that. Those are my two questions.
Thank you. Staff has shared with me that the organization walked through priority-based budgeting in the past. I guess I need some help from some of the other staff on the line, but it's my understanding we haven't done that in the last at least 1 to 2 years. Certainly, I don't think it was something we were going to be able to pick up this year without a finance staff. I mean, it's certainly something we can look at for the future, but I guess I don't have a clear understanding of. I know we went through some kind of process and got to a point that stopped, and I don't. As the new guy in the room, I'm not quite sure why. I think it may have something to do with the changes that have occurred in finance, but I don't know if anybody else has anything else to offer there. But I think that's the case. It maybe have a correlation with the changes that happened in finance, but
I would say that's pretty accurate. when we started it, we had a finance director on the way out, and we tried to pick it up in the county administration team, but we were pretty overloaded ourselves. We picked it up for a little bit and used it to assist in budgeting for about a year and a half. And then when Brent came, we thought he was going to take it on and kind of carry the ball and everything, but it just didn't really happen. So I think it fell by the wayside, Sean. And it really absolutely needs a champion. And we never really had that solid champion to sell it and create buy-in and engagement from the rest of the team members.
Yeah, so I guess the last thing I'll say about it is I think it is something we should come back to in the future and make a conscious decision about what direction we're going to head in. Because I know my perception is that we dumped a ton of effort into getting everybody on staff to micro analyze every function in the entire county and break it down into number of hours and materials and overhead and all the rest of that. And I think there's probably some value there, but I don't know. So I would just say it would be nice to either use it or retire it.
Yeah, sure, that's something I'd like to get a finance director on board first and then have those conversations. I certainly know there are other communities that have been successful at using that form of budgeting. With respect to the alternatives for compensation increase, I appreciate the comment. I don't see a lot of fluff or things that we're doing or services that we provide that we shouldn't be providing. So to cut something like that, but I think to have a conversation with our leadership team about are there ways for us to go back and take a look at our own budgets to determine are there ways to carve out enough to provide some kind of across the board. I appreciate that question.
Thanks.
And just from me on the priority-based budgeting, thank you, Sean, for bringing it up. I would love to see us pick that up as a tool or backup as a tool. And there's a part of the process that I think in my mind is a good first step, or at least in my mind right now, I think is a good first step, which is we did this exercise where we got all of the different public organizations together and we looked at what we all do to compare, look for duplication, look for opportunities for us to save money, provide better service by working together better. I thought there was some promise in the spreadsheet that was developed from that. And this is going back now, I think that meeting happened in 2018. And so I think picking that back up is another area where within priority-based budgeting, we can have some results. With regards to figuring out how to do a compensation increase, I think it's crucial. I don't suspect we have a service we're offering right now that we would say we can do without. When I look at what we do, it's mostly statutorily required stuff or stuff that's funded in other ways, like open space. But I do think it's important enough that we need to consider doing it out of general fund revenues. One of the things that I look at when I look at the general fund revenue projections is that the property tax projections are flat starting in 2022 through 2027. We're projecting property taxes will remain flat. I think a closer analysis, and I'm not suggesting that we could do this year, but I think a closer analysis would show that at some point we will start to rebound and assessed value growth will start to outweigh the loss in revenues from the Henderson, which I think we're sort of at the tail end of for the next 10 years or so. So that's maybe my comments on the topics that Sean brought up.
Mm-hmm. I think they're good questions. With regard to priority-based budgeting, I'm reminded of I'm going to take it completely outside of finance and go into other kinds of things that do very rigorous analysis. that sometimes you don't get the bang for the buck out of the analysis, yet you can learn from the program to be able how to do your own things better. I think there was a lot of good in priority-based budgeting, first of all, but I do agree that it's a very ponderous process and it cost us money, and it cost us more than just getting involved in what we pay to our consultants to help us through it. It involved all, because time is money. It involves when pursued rigorously, a lot of time on the part of our staff to dot all the i's, cross all the t's, or I guess we should get out of the alphabet into numbers and say fill all the cells, with values. And it reminds me of the LEAD program to make buildings more energy efficient, where by the time you actually execute the program and do all the paperwork, you spend an awful lot of time and money doing it, but there's a lot to be learned within the program and the system. So you learn the system and apply the principles to design, get stuff done better by what you learn from it without actually purchasing and executing the entire program. So I don't know what the answer is, but I think we need our own solution that may be more streamlined, that learns from priority-based budgeting, and maybe the full program isn't the way we need to execute it is a possibility. With regard to staff compensation, to say that, to characterize, cost of living and inflation increases as helping out our staff like it's charity is not really, I think it's remaining competitive in a job market. And it's a hard one for me to wrap my head around, especially when we have times where the economy is improving. And so I think finding ways to boost our resources so that we can continue to remain competitive in that job market and provide good services is crucial. How we do it is, I think, partially a matter of how we become more efficient as an organization, and also partially a matter of how we become more efficient at making sure we capitalize on the opportunities to receive funds through other measures, like whatever they are, like unincorporated sales taxes and other ways that we can bring things in to help absorb our impacts. But I think it's a longer conversation, and certainly we aren't going to get it done before we approve the budget this year. And anyway, that's my take on those two.
Another thing that popped out to me just during your presentation, Brian, the county admin budget shows a lot of expenses, and that's because you have a lot of folks reporting directly to the manager that are not doing county admin work, right? I'm thinking about EMS, but I know there's others there. And looking at the budget as a communications tool, it's kind of problematic. It looks like we've got a bunch of people doing that. It takes $5 million for us to administer the county. We know that that's not the case. We know that it's a pretty small team administering the county. I don't know if there's a way to fix that, but I wanted to observe that here in public for anybody that saw that number and is saying, why does it take so much to administer county government?
Yeah, I'd like to have EMS report to me, but EMS should be a separate box on the org chart. So EMS should be a box underneath the county administrator's office, county manager's office. It should be a separate box on the org chart that reports back to me.
Right.
That's just like your strategic and community planning or internal services. That those are different boxes on the chart that the top person reporting into the county manager's office. So yeah, that's an org chart change, and then that will be a budget. How we display that in budget.
Right. That's what I saw was a lot of it is, why is it so large? And it's because it also acts as a kind of a catch-all for a few operations that we have, which makes it appear to be a bloated administration when actually there are functions that are happening and budget allocations that are happening under that heading that don't. And I think of it kind of like priority-based budgeting too. Another thought that occurred to me about that, and it applies to this as well, is that based on, I think, the last 2 years, to try to judge the value of any of these financial management tools and planning tools and strategic budgeting tools over the last 2 years to judge the value of any program that wasn't even effectively implemented is pretty difficult. And I'm not blaming it on COVID. Blaming it on ourselves and everyone else for not having, maybe there's a bandwidth issue, but it is a bandwidth issue, and it's also applied bandwidth, how well the bandwidth was applied in actually executing some of these disciplines. And I think they should all be questioned and all be suspect, but I think we have to reorganize the whole thing and have it make sense before we can make real judgment about the value of some of the programs and the way we're doing them. I think we have some more lifting to do. And Brian, thank you for coming in and not only drinking out of a fire hose, but trying to put out a fire while you were drinking it. Kind of like drinking out of a fire hose and spitting on the fire the whole time. It's been you're here as a short termer. You haven't been here very long. And I recognize that there's been a whole lot that was dumped on you by circumstance and neglect.
We'll get through it. We got a good team.
Some other comments I have, I see that IT having pretty large growth. I think that's related to our loss of its director and decision to go with the contract for those services. That seems like an area where, and I know this is on all of our minds already, but that seems like an area where in 2022, we'll want to focus and gain control of that department from a expense perspective.
Yeah, I'll let Beth expand, but yeah, there's money in there for a full year contract. But at the same time, we're going to be evaluating whether or not we want to do that. So, that's the place that we're headed towards, right? So that's the evaluation that needs to occur. There's other money in there for replacing aging infrastructure that we're going to need, irrespective of whether or not we're going to a cloud or not going to a cloud. Quite honestly, they asked for more. I asked them to pare it back, but I'll let Beth add to that.
Yeah, Brian is very accurate. In your budget that you have for IT, the 156,000 is the cost of outsourcing. So basically what we used to have in IT was 4 internal employees. We lost 2 employees earlier this year. So we have 2 employees now, and we are backfilled by the Axiom Group, which is also the IT vendor for the sheriff's office. He does a great job. He knows our system really well. And I think he really gives us some great advice. So his team backfills. So the 156 in the budget is for the cost of backfilling. It's about 13 grand a month to have those guys backfill our IT team. Outside of that, it is definitely an aging infrastructure. Just last week, we just updated our virtual desktop infrastructure at $165,000 for 5 years. That's a lot of money, but we need that with so many people remote working and so many people, logging into the network that don't have a desktop. So we have, I have an entire equipment inventory that we're working on and an asset replacement schedule that we're working on. We're trying to get a handle on things and identify where all of this equipment is and how old it is. I have some life cycle reports. Brian and I actually chopped this budget down by another, I think, 250,000. I mean, when we first came at it with the equipment that was needed to update our infrastructure and our laptops, it was a lot higher. And so we've cut down on this a lot. I'm happy to share all the documentation that we've been reviewing to arrive at these numbers. And by all means, happy to accept your recommendations or advice. But it's something that we kind of inherited. We haven't spent a lot of money on IT in the past few years. And this is sort of a catch up kind of thing, but we did reduce it quite a bit so far.
I have a couple of 2 or 3 spots, and I don't know that they need real finite answers today, but just a couple of tag spots. One I'd like to point to as an example of how we can find the right people and end up saving money by changing who does what. One example I'd like to call out right now is in our county attorney, I noticed that we dropped about $50,000. Part of that is because our county attorney has some skills that he can bring to bear that are specialized that eliminate some of our need for outside professional services. So I'm glad we have somebody that can handle some of our litigation and things like that that we've been farming out in the past. And it saved us about $50,000 right there. I had started tagging some things I saw that changed either up or down. And I'm not questioning why they changed up or down anywhere, criticizing the process to date and tried to stay out of it and not, protect any sacred cows, really. I had a couple of other questions, though, that I would like to try to understand. And so you might just make a note and get back after the meeting, or if you can answer them right now and, in 50 words or less or something, that's fine too. One of them was in elections. And I note that, of course, obviously the 2021 election budget is going to be less. It's an odd numbered year. But I note that we had $180,000 in 2020, and we're down to 99,000 in 2022. I'm sure there's good reasons for that, but just trying to understand where that came from. If I can just kind of go through 2 or 3 of these that I highlighted, it'd be great. I won't mention any of the small. Yes, go ahead, George.
1 second. Tell me which line that was.
Where I am is over on your summary by department.
Okay.
And so it's just a big picture, just the really big picture stuff. And I just noted that that under elections 103 in the general fund summary by department, that we are at $180,000 in actual expenditures in 2020 for elections.
Yep.
And we have budgeted 99,000 this year. And I just want to make sure that that was a realistic expectation, because we do have to, we have to execute them. And it may be that but we were already all mail ballot, MAIL ballot in 2020. So I would think the conditions would be the same this year. Maybe improvements in the clerk and recorder's office or something, but that one bears just a tag there. Another item, and now I'm not even going to bother with that one. I noted that HR has taken a jump. Not a huge one, but a little bit of a jump there that's a little out of the ordinary. And of course, county administration shows a pretty good drop in there too, which came from a much higher place previously in 2020. And I think that probably, we just discussed that a minute ago. Facilities and maintenance, probably, I'm not sure if this projection is due to the new clinic, but we jumped from about 560,000 to 869. That's a significant increase of around, 55, 60%, I think. I'm not running the numbers on it. I noted that building inspection jumped from 126,861 to 258. But there seems to be a 2021 estimate that's lower than what we've had in the past. It looks like we're just resuming the previous years of 2020 and 2021 budget. Maybe there's an explanation why the 2021 building inspection line number 131, was significantly less. And then the IT question, the same one, I had highlighted that one as well. Those were the primary reasons. And then I didn't even really look at the sheriff's line items, because I know we're in the middle of a whole, we're working with the sheriff collaboratively and with our, with our consultants to try to look at that entire picture right now. So I don't know that it's worthwhile to do. So I didn't spend time on that. Everything else was either a real small ticket item and the smaller ticket items tend to fluctuate a little more radically just by their nature than the larger ones because of the scale. So, and there's not much that you can win or lose in the really small ticket items on their deviations. So anyway, if you note those, and if you have any immediate questions, that's fine. But otherwise, I'm good for taking a harder look as we go forward. We didn't have a ton of time to look at this before getting in here, and I'd like to take more time with it. And I really would like to thank you for your really hard work on this.
I guess I'm looking to the team. if anyone has any quick answers to some of Randy's questions, or we can get back to them later.
Okay, I'll jump in again. So, yeah, your facilities budget, you did see an increase there, and here's why. We are making an attempt to consolidate the utilities across the organization so that we can have a better handle on exactly what we're spending with Excel. And so basically we were pulling some of these numbers out of other budgets and putting them in the facilities budget. And
Okay.
I just want to show you one really quick thing, and it's a bit of a shocker. So this is some of the information that we realized when we did this, when we started consolidating utilities. So here is a look at what our annual utilities are per year for the entire organization. Let's see. Okay. Can you see the spreadsheet?
Yes.
Okay. So you can see we pay utilities in quite a few jurisdictions. And of the $500,000 a year that we pay in utilities, almost half of that is to Georgetown Water and Sewer. This is a bit of a shocker for us, and it's something that we want to work on with the town. There was an agreement made a long time ago to accept a certain formula instead of based on water meter usage. And I think it definitely stabbed us in the back. So we'd like to have some conversations with Georgetown because we're actually being charged for more than twice what we're actually using in water. So this was something that we discovered in the process of consolidating some of these items. Now, some of the items, some of the utilities cannot be consolidated. For example, the animal shelter. You know, Gilpin pays a portion of the operating costs there. So we left those out. And then we also have some of the utilities at the courthouse for the 911 center because there is a consortium there of jurisdictions that pay those kind of bills. So I just wanted to share just that quick spreadsheet with you and let you know that we are in the process of trying to get a better handle on the utilities that the county's paying.
Okay, thanks. One other thing I'll throw on the list that I noted is the only one that popped out to me. Well, only because I haven't really dug deeply into anything. In the looking back into the meat of it, under strategic and community planning divisions, I just happened to notice that the housing department 2022 budget is shrunk back down to less than 2020's original budget. And of course, the 2021 actual was even less than this number, though. 2021 was considerably higher. It may be reflective of how we organize things too, but I also wondered if it was reflective of the effort that we think we can put into housing. And I just wanted to bring that up and ask that question because I know we've identified housing as one of our primary areas that needs help, and to help it. And I'm not suggesting that we spend lots of money building housing or something, but to provide the attention to it to know. And I just don't know if that effort is budgeted in other areas or exactly why we're down to $39,071 for a housing department total budget.
I can just answer that briefly, Randy. The 2021 housing budget included the expenditure for the housing consultants.
Okay.
And the 2022 budget does not. And then we have not yet come up with our strategy that will be based on the recommendations of the housing consultant group. So that's not reflected in the 2022 budget. So
Okay.
yeah, so that's the difference. That takes us up and down over the hill in 2021 with a little bit more. And then on the building inspector discrepancy, I believe that is because there was some inconsistency with where various staff were allocated in the year 2021. That just got a few people were not in the budgets that they were most accurately reflected in. I think that's what you may be noting there. So 2022 is showing everybody in their proper homes. But there were a few folks that ended up in the wrong budgets. Just, I think it was just
See it.
connected to the restructuring That started in 2020 with the creation of the Strategic and Community Planning Division and transitioning that from community development. And there was just a fair amount of puts and takes in that process that contributed to some legitimate confusion there probably.
Okay, and I know we can only do, and none of these questions are criticizing the numbers of the people, just trying to understand better. And going back to the housing, I was thinking about our long-term strategic goal and the importance we placed on trying to see what our role is and how much we expect to invest in terms of time in dealing with that in a general sense. And so I just wanted to flag that one, that it's a question that needs to be answered as we talk about this going forward, and that if we are going to be working on it this year, I want to make sure that we have a way to work on it, you know.
Randy, I appreciate you bringing that up. It was on my list too. My recollection is that, or at least what I understood and the intent in our 2021 budget was that we were funding a permanent increase in our housing efforts. There's a desperately needed function, which is putting together projects and working with the community on those projects. I think that the housing budget needs to be an FTE larger, and we can work on making that more accurate based on the feedback we get from Willa, and we can talk about whether that should be in-house or whether it should be consultant work to get projects into the pipeline. But the fact of the matter is, we had a study that showed us we have a housing crisis. Last year, we took the effort to take that study off the shelf and get to work on it. I want to see those efforts continue. And the state of Colorado has $400 to $500 million available for housing efforts that we need to have the capacity in that department to be able to compete for those funds. And so I think this one's pretty important to me.
The only thing I would say is, having talked to Willa about their work that's in progress, I won't comment on their work, but I don't find that a natural conclusion from what I'm hearing about so far, in terms of the overall stakeholders, such as the towns where the majority of the development is likely to take place. So I think that's probably a conversation for another day, but I just wanted to gently put a marker down on that one right now.
Yeah. And I think we have a role within the towns as well. You know, we're not a land use authority, which actually in a lot of ways frees us up to be advocates for affordable housing. But yes, Sean, you're right. That is not a conversation we're going to complete today.
Kate, were you going to cover the other question?
Yeah, I wanted to jump in real quick for the increase in the HR department's budget. Part of that was based upon the prior finance director assuming that the HRIS program would continue to stay at the same cost as was originally proposed, and kept the same budget in 2020, that it just turned out to be more than what it had been, for one. And then two, we took on the HR assistant. Half of it's being, her position is being taken over by HR, and the other half is being taken over by finance. So that's where the costs are coming from my department.
You can see that increase in the salary line.
It sounds like most of what we're talking about is just reallocation and restructuring, numbers moving around that I'm not picking up what happened in another area. You know, there may have been something that moved out of something over here, or moved out of the smaller item over there, so it shows up as a big percentage change, and it doesn't show up on the other end as much, and I'm not seeing it. So, but those are all the numbers I heard, except for maybe the housing. Well, the housing one's explained by the study, but then there's that other question about what emphasis we want to place on it, and that's a discussion we need to figure out. And the only immediate question, I think the only pressing immediate question is whether that's an adequate budget that reflects our intentions for the year 2022.
And I think we recognize that it probably isn't, but not knowing what's coming from Willa, we didn't want to presuppose anything. So I think that's something we can come back to you on
Right.
once we've got that, the recommendations coming from that study.
I always do supplemental appropriations, etc. Just know that I'm looking to get more effort and not more effort out of the people that are here. The people that are here are working their tails off. So that means more people.
I'm hoping, and that's fine. I am hoping we can have a conversation of, what that looks like. Whether that's a housing person or whether that's an economic development person who's focused on that.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess I would just, one of the things I'm kind of in my head is that the amount of money that is available out there is a resource that could provide capacity for us that doesn't have to come from the general fund.
It can. It takes money to make money, and George pointed out a moment ago that just so we've allocated enough. And I recognize that a lot of the work that we do, and George brought this up, we don't want to. You can't get time out of a turnip, and so a lot of the people are already pretty busy. I give an example of. Amy has to every 5 minutes run out and do a costume change. She's carrying so much work right now. And as an example, I just want to make sure that we're able to adequately mount the effort to go get those funds, last thing else, that was the last thing I will have said on it.
So. Okay, so some other smaller questions for answering now or later. Going back to the DA's budget, it looks like, and I'm not finding where I found this. I found this in the book earlier. It looks like we overspent the 2021 budget by $80,000, and I'm a little curious.
You will find that under the other general funds tab. First page past the cover sheet is non-departmental. Last line on expenditures is the district attorney budget. I noticed that myself and actually had a conversation with our finance staff, and I think we may be getting overcharged. So I need to look into that.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if we, in a contract, give the district attorney authority to overspend to that degree, and I don't know the events that happened that caused it to happen, but
or we didn't budget enough. It's one of the two.
Right. Yeah, we may have agreed to more than we actually budgeted. So I noticed that. I don't know that I need an answer because it's on your radar and
Yeah, definitely
get fixed one way or another. I noticed a pretty steep reduction in PILT. Any insight into, I know that comes out of the federal government.
Beth found the number on, I can't find where I wrote it down, Beth.
Department of Interior for Cook County.
344,458 is what the Department of Interior is showing up that we were collected. So we're, that's a little less than 6,000 less than that 350 we're estimating.
And I don't know if you guys have heard anything different, but just in looking at some of the federal budgets online, they were predicting maybe a 2% increase in PILT for 2022. But I don't know if you guys are hearing the same thing. You guys would know better than us what they're talking about out there. So.
And that's kind of why I asked the question, because usually if there's going to be a steep reduction in PILT, we will hear about it through NACO or CCI and, be asked to send letters, etc.
Yeah.
I want to ask about the transit department. There's a pretty large increase in both revenues and expenditures. I think that is due to CARES funding and other COVID relief money. And I don't need a thorough answer right now. I'm just curious if in the long run, we can expect those costs to decline as those kind of feels like to me one-time revenues decline. Or if we'll need to figure out whether we're reducing services or increasing general fund contributions at some point in the future.
Yeah, if you're looking at the transit budget itself, there's 3 grants in there that are new for 22. The 2022, the one that's 290,000, the one that's 50,000, the one that's 76. If we don't get those grants, then we'll be coming back to you about potential for the reduction of service. We have added a 3rd bus, correct me, Beth, I think we've added a 3rd bus based on the demand that's there.
That's correct.
But if we're unable to fund it through the grants, then we're gonna have to come back and have a conversation about the potential for reduced service.
That's correct. George, your question is great and it's spot on. Transit got a lot of money separate from the county. The county got CARES funds, the transit got CARES funds. We are waiting to hear about ARPA funds that is separate for transit. We also got what they call the SRSA grant. It's in there in our revenues. That's another really big grant we got just for transit for COVID relief. So those, we also have to spend those as fast as possible. So we are using them for operating expenditures right now. You'll see we did that a lot last year. We spent all of our CARES money that they gave us. They gave us 2 sets of CARES money. They gave us some operating, and then we also got that new bus or a new used bus. So every time there's a grant cycle, we're applying. We're not messing around. We are trying to offset this cost as much as possible for the county. Demand does keep going up. We sent you our ridership numbers, and we're well over 1,000 people a month now. So it's a great discussion that we need to have is what do we do when the one-time revenues go away? Do we reduce service or do we backfill from the general fund? And we would love to talk about that with y'all.
Okay, thank you. I think that's the sum of my specific questions. I have a general comment, which is that since we got the news from the Henderson mine, we rightfully embraced austerity and budget cuts. It feels to me like the accumulation of a lack of pay increases and a general sense of austerity is feeling unsustainable for our staff. And it feels unsustainable to me in light of the challenges that we face, like housing and wildfire mitigation and climate change. And well, there's I can keep going with all of those things that we need to find ways to show up for our communities on. I want us to find a path to investing substantial general fund reserves in a way that increases our future capacity, whether that's through, well, mostly through economic development. But I want to see us transition from austerity to strategic investment in our future. And that's just a general comment that I wanted to make.
I tend to agree with that. I think that it's not that it wasn't necessary for us to really become aggressive about dealing with that, as well as about, I mean, both in terms of the efficiency of our operations as well as finding revenues. But I think we have our language in front of our staff has talked about austerity as though it should not be, as though it was not balanced with respect for their lives and their employment and the job they do for us, to an extent that I think has, and I just want to express to anyone here and anybody spread it out there that that's certainly not my philosophy of what we're dealing with and what we need to do. I consider the staff that's doing our workforce to be as easily as important as our obligation to the taxpayers to handle this in a fiscally responsible manner. I think we've been doing that, but I think how we talk about it and how we see the future and what we decide, the course we decide to chart for the future and whether it's worthy to chart is really, really important, how we talk about that. Because we've been on that bandwagon for a long time, and we've all seen. I heard it when I first ran in 2012 and lost. There were people I talked to, and that were on our staff as I made the rounds. When I was campaigning, and I kind of saw the fear in their eyes because we were talking about it very strongly then, and we've talked about it very strongly ever since. And they need to do a good job. They need to be compensated, and they also need to feel the love that our intent is to operate also aggressively to find ways to fund this organization and build a better future for the county.
And I agree philosophically and conceptually with all of that. I think talking to Carl Small when I was first elected, I had a different understanding of what those dollars are. And my understanding was they're essentially a bridge that's going to carry us over to financial sustainability. And probably that means even perhaps a smaller government. So I think it's something that maybe we would need to wait until our finance director's online and has a really good understanding of not only this year's budget and next year's budget, but what's the trajectory for the next 10 or 20 years. If it turns out we have dollars that are sitting there that have no obligations in the current or future, I think that's a good conversation we should have. But I think that before we start talking about spending money that we collected primarily from Henderson during the go-go years, we would need to really understand what commitments we've already made.
Yeah, Sean, I appreciate those comments, and it gets back to, just like you said, we really need to shore up our long-term property tax revenue projections. And I would like to see that as a project we really focus on as a high priority for our new finance director.
All revenues, not just property tax.
Yeah. Property tax to me seems to be where we're making the least defensible assumptions.
Right. I think having really accurate knowledge and allocation is important, and that will of our current state, which will help us make better projections for the future, and digging into those projections for all the streams of revenue is important. Just looking at a supply side thing, and then also through that analysis, determine where we're missing opportunities, and can manage our acquisition of funds better, not for the purpose of just growing government on its own, but to make sure we have a sustainable, a sustainable source that takes care of the people that we need to provide the services, as well as to be able to provide good services.
Yeah, and I mean, we're in an era where county governments are on the front lines of a lot of problems that are growing rapidly. The one that was missing my mind earlier was recreation management. And so figuring out how to build capacity to address those issues that I hear about every day from our constituents, I'm sure you do too, is definitely front of mind for me.
Mm-hmm.
So you just reminded me, I failed to mention in my open, the trails, I'm forgetting the title. Amy, help me with the title. The budget does recommend transferring some conservation trust fund monies into the general fund to hire a position, a temporary position to do trail maintenance. What's the title, Amy?
The seasonal 8-month position called Trailhead Manager. So it would be an 8-month position that would focus on managing the trailheads specifically in the county, focusing on making sure we have somebody to coordinate on porta potties and vault toilets, and just offsetting some of the work that is currently distributed across Martha and James and potentially some of the other entities across the county in the future. But we did decide to transfer the Conservation Trust Fund. That is an annual fund revenue source that comes in at about 40 grand a year.
So it wouldn't be a hit to the general fund.
Right. So that will be an increase in recreation management.
What were we doing with the Conservation Trust Fund before?
It was unbudgeted in 21.
So I think we were letting it accrue basically and then using it for other purposes. We did apply a few years worth of it to the Peaks to Plains Trail, for example, to help fund that section of trail that's getting built right now in the canyon. But it wasn't, we haven't had, it had been used for various purposes over the years. I think by using it for this purpose at this point, we then have an opportunity to do things like, I think it can sort of be seed money. I don't think we might not have to use all of it every year. In future years, we might be able to get other entities to use portions of their conservation trust funds, because I think every entity gets some. So we might be able to use this position to be a consolidation, a collaborative service that other entities can pool resources to provide this a coordinated maintenance service across other entities for areas where it makes sense. So we might not have to put our whole conservation trust fund nut in every year for this. We'll see.
And
But since it's a seasonal position, we also have the opportunity to sort of make this commitment, reconsider this commitment each year. Seemed like a win-win.
Okay, to the extent that we have a tough conversation around housing efforts, and we have a trails team and other functions that conservation trust fund could probably also be transferred to. I might have a higher priority on finding our way to investing in housing.
I think that's going to be
It's restricted.
Yeah, it's not an eligible use for the funds.
Right, but so if say, for example, the trails team, which is a conservation effort, then you reduce the general fund investment in that, transfer it to the trails team, reduce the general fund investment in that, and use those savings to apply to part of our increased investment in housing.
I think that to the extent that doesn't strip I think that's a legitimate way to think about reallocation of funds and finding opportunities to use funds in places where they can be is a good idea. I think in addition to our trailheads and our local recreation planning is also informed by our regional recreation collaboration, which I think we're getting really good leverage out of right now. You know, when we're able to go out and find with a minor contribution, you know, close to $500,000 or better in efforts that are the regional collaboration within which we participate. And I'm not suggesting an increase in that area of what we're doing. It's a very minimal part right now, but making sure that we have that. And I think also in some of that regional collaboration to be able to expand our bandwidth and maintain participation with our federal and state partners, since about 75% of our land in the county is federal and state land. And so those impacts on us, kind of like the highway, are big deals that we maintain a strong attentiveness to and strong planning forward. And I think we're doing a pretty good job of it right now, but just making sure we're able to continue that is important. But I'm not really talking about something that relates to budget right now in 2022 budget, because I think we have that covered properly over the next year without having to allocate any more sources that way. But
Thanks. And we could just decide to spend the money too. It just depends on the extent to which we are feeling the squeeze.
Thanks.
Any other questions, comments?
I actually have a question, and this may be directed to Brian. And I don't want to put him on the spot, though. There was a slide, excuse me. There was a slide concerning these positions that are not funded, but are asked by the various departments or divisions. And I was curious whether this is something that you are asking the board to consider the next time we come back, how that plays into the overall cost of living adjustment that we were hoping for, things like that. I know that in the proposed budget that I proposed, I incorporated into that budget the new cost of that provision, but I wasn't sure how that was going to work.
Thanks for putting me on the spot.
You're welcome.
As I said at the very open, you know, my goal here in the future is going to be facilitating a more collaborative process, right? So I shared the unfunded list with the board, so there's an understanding of what some of those needs are that are out there in the departments and divisions that just are going unfunded. That list is not prioritized by any means. And am I asking the board to consider those items? If I personally was going to prioritize those items, it would be the compensation increase across the board, not any one of the individual positions. I am not personally asking you to consider them because I have no idea how you would fit them in based on where we are right now with respect to our revenues and in our cost of service. So there are other positions. There are other positions that I think the organization needs that I didn't even put on the list because I just didn't feel it made sense. The needs are too great. They outweigh the resources we have. So I want them to understand what the need is that's going unfunded, but I wasn't necessarily saying, please give consideration to adding something back from this list. If that's something the board chooses to do, that's something the board chooses to do. But we could also go back as a team and prioritize some of that unfunded items also. But I don't know if that's helpful given where we stand from a resource perspective. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, Peter.
It does, but the thing is, and I think that the common theme from the departments has been that in many areas they are understaffed. And so it's not just that they can't necessarily perform the services in a timely manner and be responsive, but it's impacting the service that we do provide to the public. I think of areas such as in strategic and community planning, areas where there are delays just by virtue of the fact that you're short people. And so in the long run, does it make sense to keep staff so lean? If we had a larger staff that could then move us forward and possibly even generate more revenue as a result of that. I mean, it's kind of a cost benefit analysis. And I don't know from a financial aspect whether it's something that you would fund by dipping into reserves, if that's a probable or a possible way. I think that frankly, it looks like there have been times when we have been dipping into reserves, and that's not something that is advisable, certainly. But it's also hard to work within our means when we have so many deficiencies right now in staffing. And I'm not sure where that median is. And that's, of course, not a decision I have to make, but it's something I am curious about.
We have to pave our existing roads before we build new ones. As much as I agree, we need some new ones also.
It's roughly $650,000 in annually in unfunded requests.
Which compounds over time.
Right. I would be curious to hear from the leadership team how they prioritize these new position asks. I'll note a couple things. One is that the county attorney's office had an assistant historically and lost that assistant in the midst of budget cuts that may have been sustainable for our former county manager who had been on the job for 16 years and just was able therefore to move quicker on things just because of embodied knowledge. That's something we might need to look at. I look at the need for a PIO and the need for an admin assistant. And I wonder if that could be combined into one FTE. That might be too much work, but I look at public information and I think we need to find a way to make that investment too. It's a crucial need.
That's a full-time job. There's no question in my mind that that's a full-time job for the county. I mean, you have a goal right now on the objectives list for the development of a countywide communications plan. I have no one on staff that's going to build that for us.
Yeah.
That's the work of a PIO. Unless I drop a whole bunch of stuff off of my plate when I start working on it.
And it's crucial work.
Yeah, and again, though, I want to be clear. We have a lot of needs that are going unfunded, and there are needs that aren't even on that list. So.
At some point, we may need to talk about having a conversation with the public about a mill increase to the general fund. And maybe one of the things that we could ask our finance director to do is estimate what kind of an increase would get us to a more sustainable position.
Yeah, I think your first comment though about, some kind of a thorough analysis of all revenues, that's the first step of that. Like you said, it's really taking a hard look at property tax and where we see that headed in relationship to the declines that are going to be coming from the mine. That was a spot on comment. We need to do that kind of analysis first. But yeah,
I think to set the goal aggressively so that we can. I totally agree that that's what we need to do across the board in order to understand everything in revenues and expenditures, sort of our streamlined version of priority-based budgeting, if you will, to reorganize in a sensible manner and understand it. But then to do that in a manner that is expeditious so that we can get to that second goal, which is to address that second step, which is to address those goals that are being articulated here.
I would suggest maybe we schedule a future work session to talk about this. I think this is a huge issue and it's not going to be given any justice in this setting at the end of this meeting.
And that's what I mean exactly, Sean, that we actually, sometimes we set these goals and then we're buried in the work and we don't get to them, to that big picture thing that can improve how we think about it. So I'm just saying, not just something on the things to do list that we don't get to check the box, but we need to put it at the kind of the top of the list.
Yep. And I know there was a time when I thought I heard consensus. We wanted to spend 25% of our time talking about long-term and strategy, and we're not doing that yet. And I think this is a perfect example of a topic that would fit well within that framework.
John, are you speaking specifically to this revenue analysis need? Is that what you're speaking to, or something broader than that?
I'm talking about, to me, there's three things that we can do. We can grow our economy. We haven't really been behaving like that's a hugely important thing. We can increase taxes, or we can reduce the size of our government, right? Or some combination of those three. But it sounds like that's a robust conversation that needs to happen. I think it needs public engagement and it needs time on our calendar.
I agree. And I think it's time well spent. I don't know that we have to have the word goal appear on the agenda for us to say we're talking about our goals. I think that's what we've been doing right now. And I hope staff doesn't feel like taking a little bit of extra time to talk about this stuff is a waste of their time. My hope is that having us talk about some of this stuff in some general terms helps staff understand what's on our minds. So I hope that's a good use of your time. If it's not, please accept my apology.
And I would reframe that a little bit. I mean, we always talk about the urgent, right? We always talk about the timely. we don't always talk about things that are hugely important but not urgent, and this is an example of that. And I think that's a first-class topic, right? That's not something that we should view as a homework assignment for anybody or something that's above and beyond what their job description are. It's a key function that this board needs to focus on, that I blame myself as much as I blame anyone. And I mean, the pandemic is a great excuse to trot out if we want to, but you know, this is something, the reason why we're having this conversation is because we're delinquent in this, in my opinion.
I agree, and I think we're talking about today making sure we keep it on our plate until we
Yep.
begin to be set. You know, it's an ongoing thing. We'll never be done, so we can always be dissatisfied with it. But I'd like to be less dissatisfied, and by working harder on that structure and that sustainable future and that recognition of our goals and then charting a path towards them is important.
As a leadership team, we have one meeting a month scheduled for that very conversation.
We're in violent agreement.
I don't think it's gotten too violent here. Any other comments, topics?
I just say thanks again to staff and to Brian and Peter. I think that we're looking at this at a much more professional level this time around, it seems to me. And I know it's going to be a lot of work, but I look forward to getting this budget done.
Is there a next step from the three of your perspectives?
I think the priority-based budgeting issue is something that needs to be figured out, and probably staff needs to get together and figure out what they think about that and bring your thoughts back to this board, would be my guess, would be one next step.
Yeah, I guess I view that as something a little longer term. My question was more specific to this specific budget. I'd like to get a finance director on board and have that priority-based conversation with that new individual. But that's not going to happen before your need to adopt this budget. So I guess my more immediate question for the three of you is there anything specific in terms of next steps that you need from us with respect to budget, or what is that next step from your perspective?
I think, to me, it feels like probably it's on the Board of Commissioners after this meeting, so we don't belabor this meeting with it right now. Things like that housing discussion. I think if the three of us see a line item that we think, hey, this needs to go up, this needs to go down, or something needs to go down to cover it, but if there's anything we feel is shortchanged or missing or dropped, and it's not a criticism at all. I think you've done a great job of embracing in a short period of time here the challenges and the importance of a lot of these items. But man, it can take years to learn the importance of some of these things, and peculiar to a given community like this. So I think if we see a triage to a line item, we go, oh wait, this is not going to work. We need to articulate that to you in an email or something, and then maybe we'll hit it with a quick work session in it, individually to you, and then see if we can find a way to, if there's a line item that needs to be fixed that any of the three of us perceive, I think we should get that over to Brian as quickly as possible. And if we need to come back to public meeting to settle that, fine. And then so we can get you through this. And then I think that next part, that whole restructuring analysis of the whole budget, once you've done your reallocation work, then we can dig into that long range planning and its implications for, the 2023 budget and beyond.
Yeah, I mean, I think Randy captured it well. There's a bunch of comments made here. I sent a list of comments, I think all of which I've put voice to here. Making adjustments that you think are worthwhile based on those comments is a good next step. And then, to the extent you have the bandwidth, I would be curious to know how the leadership team would prioritize those unfunded requests. I see a couple in there that might be worth going after this year. I don't think we do ourselves any favors by adopting a budget that we don't have confidence will get the work done that we know needs to be done. And so I see that as a next step.
One thing that I'm really interested in, I know I brought this up before, and I think this would probably be something that would need to be secondary in importance after the new finance director landed on their feet and got up to speed. But I'd love to see how our county government's grown over the last 10 and 20 years and see which functions have really are eating our budget and kind of be informed by that knowledge too.
And I think that's a good thing to do. And I think also to balance it against the return on that investment. There are places that we can spend more effort and funds that are helpful, and then those that are less helpful. So I think knowing that return on investment to the community is important.
Yeah, and that seems like a natural exercise for a new county manager and finance director to undertake. It certainly would be informative to me as well.
Yeah, at night. That's what I'm thinking. But
I'm going to add that topic to my list to talk with the three of you about. I'm going to flesh it out a little bit, what that looks like.
Okay. Anything else?
Thank you again, the three of you, for the direction. Thank you to all the staff that put a lot of hard work into this. Thank you to Patsy again. A lot of work goes into budgeting for sure.
Yes, it does. So, okay, then with that, thanks everyone. We are adjourned. Our next scheduled meeting is next Tuesday, the 19th. I don't have the start time, but
that brings up something that popped up recently. I think we kind of popped our start times around kind of like 8:15, 8:30, 8:45, 9 o'clock, around 10 o'clock. I think if we could be more consistent with that and say either it fits on the agenda or it goes to the next meeting other than in the most egregious circumstances, so that we can kind of like, you know, have our clocks set that we know when the drop dead time is. Because there's nothing I hate worse than tripping down the stairs with it and spilling a cup of coffee to run down and look at my schedule and to be able to open the agenda and see what time the meeting starts and stuff like that. Not that I don't try to look at the agenda ahead of time, but those times come where, you know, you may have looked at it and just forgotten, you know, oh, it's 8:30, it's 8:15, it's 8:45. So I think a consistent start time could be very helpful to us whenever, you know, and I don't know if that's 9 or I don't care if it's 8 or 9 or whatever, but if we can have a regular start time, it would be great.
I think so too. I think that'd be beneficial to the public.
Yes.
To know when public comment is on a weekly basis, etc.
8:30 start.
So I just
Sean
pulled up
brought that
the,
up before too, and I think he's not on screen right now, but I think he supports that.
I just pulled up the October 19th agenda, and it does have an 8:15 start because of stuff we have on there. We were accommodating people and outside agencies.
In
So
the interest of making the attorney happy, how about I cover this with you individually?
okay.
Yeah, this is not an agenda conversation. Just a general comment. I don't think we're asking for any action right now or anything. So we'll go ahead and be adjourned. Our next meeting is October 19th, starting at 8:15.
Very good. Thank
See
you.
you all then.